There are four key mistakes, and I'm going to start with one that I've said before, I talk about a lot, and that's accountability, is they don't hold people accountable. This mistake is akin to workplace child neglect. Strong language. I was in a workshop one time teaching a group, talking about how people don't hold other people accountable. And there was a gentleman in the audience who said to me, this sounds a lot like child neglect, but with adults. And I was stunned, so was everybody else. I mean, really touchy topic. But he was right. If you picture, and this is the example he gave me, because he was so getting the message of the workshop. If you have a small child at a street corner and you're the guardian or parent, and you let go of their hand and they run into the street and you do nothing about it, you can be charged with neglect. Well, we let our employees run into the street. The street here is that area where they're not accountable to something, or they're not meeting the expectations they're required to meet. And so I coined the phrase employee neglect. When we do this kind of neglect, we're being neglectful to our employees. We're not holding them to a standard. This negates the pushback I've got for years that, boy, this seems so parental, and adults should be treated as adults. Well, yes, they should, but adults also need accountability. And so when you don't have that, you engage in employee neglect, what happens is you're at least somewhat culpable for their failure if you have to help them exit the organization or they leave on their own. So this mistake that's being made actually is about recognizing first and foremost that employee neglect takes place. Second is that accountability is key, and that it's not only key, but it's helpful and warranted. And what I find is, just like children who are in a structured environment and they've got great parents who are holding them accountable, and they prosper and they just do so well, same thing happens in companies as well. The second key mistake I find is all about follow-through. Companies don't follow through on their initiatives. So again, there's an accountability piece of this as well. My favorite word for this is it's the flavor of the month. Classic example, I was in the Northeast one time and I went into a company, and I was the first consultant they had hired. Yet they'd had such doubts about their leadership team, and I remember meeting with Charles, one of the managers, and he just had the worst attitude. And he looked at me and he said, well, how long is this going to last? I said, well, what do you mean, Charles? He said, well, these guys are so good at the flavor of the month. And those were his exact words, that, this maybe will last, 6, 8 weeks. What happened between the partners in this firm, there was this recurring pattern over and over again of not doing what they say they're going to do. And being the entrepreneurs that they were, they decided it was much more fun to come up with a new idea than persist with the old idea. So this lack of follow-through, it's often attributed to the employee level. Where it often starts is the leadership level. The third mistake, and this one drives me crazy, is the belief that low-margin, high-volume business is a good idea. It is a terrible idea. And I'm going to point to I'm going to do this right, I hope. There's a rule that happens here is the lower the margin or the lower the profitability of a deal that a customer wants you to put together, the more demanding that customer tends to be. They want to pay the least, but they demand the most. Now, when you flip that, the more a customer pays you, they tend to have more respect for what you do, they value what you do, and the amount of labor you put into that one substantially decreases. I've seen thousands of examples of this in my over 10 years, actually more than 12 years as an independent consultant, and prior to that as well. Yet companies persist in this belief that if we just, make up enough in volume, it'll somehow mitigate the fact that we're getting such low margins or profits, and it just doesn't work. Smarter companies are starting to shift out of that business more and more frequently. What they realize is that proposition doesn't work because they're spending so much, that proposition of the low margin, high volume doesn't work because they're spending so much time servicing that high demand client who's paying them so little. So companies are starting to wake up to this, but it's still a tremendous mistake. These discounters out there, there's a lot of great companies that do that. But when you look at their profits at the end of the day, what shows up at the bottom line is starting to really make sense to them that it doesn't work. However, they don't know how to extract themselves out of that situation. Lastly, and I could pick from any number of mistakes, is that companies don't reinvent themselves. From time to time, organizations have to change what they do, not who they are, but what they do. One of my examples I like on this one is every now and then Coke or Pepsi will come out with a new can. When they launch the new can, it's interesting. In fact, I just saw a new Pepsi can the other day, and it was mostly red like a Coke can, but right emblazoned on it was the Pepsi symbol. And I was just blown away. I had not seen this version before. But what was also on the can were words something like, new look, same great taste. So they're making sure people know they haven't changed the formula. Well, why do Pepsi, why do Coke, why do other product manufacturers do this? Well, after a while, if you're looking at the same thing over and over again, it becomes like the art in your home. Most of us don't notice that after a while until somebody walks in and goes, oh, nice piece. And we look at it and go, oh, yeah, I haven't looked at that in a while. It's the same thing with products, and manufacturers know this. People start to get so used to them, they take them for granted. Companies deal with the same thing, the same processes, the same ideas, the same marketing campaigns, the same sales pitch. It gets very tired after a while. Organizations have to reinvent themselves from time to time. Some are successful doing this on their own, but often they have to come to people like me simply because they can't get out of themselves. They need help rethinking and coming up with new ideas or reinventing the old ones so that old tired pitch becomes one that's new and it's fresh and it's exciting again.